always find it linked in my description box, or just go to ASMRxbabee.com. It's exactly the same as a Patreon. Helps to support my channel. There's a ton of content that you all have access to immediately when you join. There is new content coming all the time and a sense of community. So, happy Labor Day weekend to everybody. First off, I am getting ready to go to the Poconos for a night. So by the time you're watching this, I will be back. So I wanted to I do not often do true crime or discussing things like true crime in videos and in rambles, but occasionally there are cases that strike me as so interesting and all-consuming, and the case of the University of Idaho students that were killed by Bryan Kohberger in 2022 is something that I have found equally terrifying, heart-wrenching, and fascinating among a ton of other people. This case has caught so much media. I have made TikToks and talked about this case before. It's possible that I even did a YouTube video about it before, but in light of some of the new evidence becoming released, I wanted to talk about it some more as an outlet for myself to get your feedback, and also just to keep the memory of the victims alive, and just talk about it. It's just a lot. So I'm not gonna tell the full story again. For those that don't know, you can look it up. It's everywhere, and I feel like most people know, but just to set the scene, I have my notes on my phone so I stay organized. That's another reason I don't always do true crime videos, because I can't tell a cohesive story. I'm just a rambler. So this crime happened at the University of Idaho in November of 2022. This was a very small college town, very safe, quiet area. So this was really shocking. A lot of people, neighbors, people in the area, other students talked about how they wouldn't lock their doors. Nothing ever happened in Moscow. And it was just a very unexpected tragedy, which I feel like is where, a lot of this is like setting the scene for a lot of similar stories. As far as the victims, there were 4 University of Idaho students. There was Kaylee Gonzalez, Maddie Mogan, Santa Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. Kaylee and Maddie, I'm pretty sure, were best friends. They were all roommates at one point, minus Ethan. He didn't actually live there, but he was boyfriend. Him and Xana were boyfriend and girlfriend, so he would come and stay over a lot. And Kaylee actually had already graduated and moved out, but had come home for the night to hang out with her friends, show off her new car. She had just gotten a Range Rover, so she was, really wrong place, wrong time, unfortunately. So, the suspect, or now convicted, killer here, is Bryan Kohberger. He was a PhD student in criminology, ironically enough, and he had a reputation for being kind of demonizing people that have had issues with drugs, but I think he had a drug problem at one point. And he just overall had kind of this like obsession with criminal behavior. The victims, the students, they were all ranged between like, I want to say like 19 to 22. Bryan Kohberger, I think, was like 28 at the time. So again, just really high level of the case was that, you know, these 4 students were in their home. It was around 4 o'clock in the morning on this November evening, and, you know, Bryan Kohberger came into the house and brutally murdered all 4 of them using a K-bar knife, which is like a military grade weapon. There were a ton of factors at play and like new material and details, which is something that I want to talk about mostly in this video. But he killed them. It was unclear at the time what had happened. Like, it did not seem, and still does not seem, like he had any sort of connection with these people. He was not one of their classmates. He was, it's known that he had visited the restaurant where Maddie Mogen worked, called the Mad Greek, a few times, and she was a waitress there. He was vegan. They had like lots of vegan options. Who knows if that's where he first caught her eye, or she caught his eye. And but he definitely, there's evidence that he was stalking, you know, them. The property had driven by multiple times. His phone had pinged there, even though he kind of did his best to hide the evidence and clear his, you know, search history, use a VPN, all of the things. He was very sloppy in a lot of ways, and just, you know, what criminal is actually extremely smart and does a perfect crime? I don't know. Is there one? Has there ever been one? So yeah, and there's 2 surviving roommates in the house. They called 911, you know, the next morning. They were confused, they were drunk. That's something I want to talk about. And the now basically, and Bryan Kohberger was eventually arrested. He has recently pled guilty. He is going to be in jail forever. He took a guilty plea in exchange for them taking the death penalty off the table, which the only thing that I think a lot of people are aggravated by is that he did not have to tell his story or confess or give any sort of detail or anything like that. Who knows if he will eventually. He did confess, he pleaded guilty, but we still don't understand. There's so many unanswered questions and so much why, and, you know, just what was going through his head and why these people, and, you know, whatever. So basically, getting to the new material that has come out, and there's been questions about the ethical nature of whether these things coming out are, you know, respectful to the family. Are they fair from like a justice and like law standpoint? So basically what was released were crime scene photos, nothing with the actual victims like in it, of course. And the crime scene photos, there's not that were released, none of it is particularly vulgar. I'm of course not going to show anything, but I don't like when people make videos and say, I'm not going to show anything out of respect for the family. Like, you're still talking about it, and people can Google or whatever. So yes, I'm acknowledging that I am talking about this. I can't imagine how the families are feeling, but it just is something that is so interesting and so sad, and it has helped me to think about ways that I could keep myself safe in my own home, and maybe added a little bit of paranoia families, you know, went through unimaginable loss and now have this media scrutiny, and I hope that it does die down for them. And I know that I'm not contributing to it dying down from them, so I just wanted to acknowledge that. But there have been new crime scene photos. The 911 call was also released, although I feel like that had been released a little bit ago. So I feel like I had heard that before, but you guys can check me on that. And then the biggest thing is probably the police body cam footage. Now, I think what's so crazy is the police body cam footage being now a required thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like that became a thing after the George Floyd death. But again, don't quote me on that. Somebody inform me. I'm not actively Googling. I'm just kind of talking off cuff. So the fact that we're able to see like these police officers speak to witnesses, speak to the surviving roommates, walk through the house, discover, you know, the students' bodies, you know, slain in their rooms. It's just absolutely, it's like a car crash. It's hard to look away, right? And we can't like fault ourselves for kind of being interested, but I know, again, I'm someone that I do have the bigger picture thought of like, shouldn't we just get rid of all murder and true crime podcasts and documentaries and videos so that these serial killers or these people at least won't have any motivation to do copycat things and these horrific crimes and seek fame and infamy? But that's obviously a whole can of worms. And I actually did listen to I think it was one of the lawyers in the case talking about, you know, from a like moral standpoint, like the families have a right to be upset, like it makes sense, this feels like a huge invasion of privacy. But they were kind of explaining about why, you know, the law is what it is, and that these pictures and body cam footage and things are, you know, for public record and are being released because, you know, back in the day, the justice system could be really like shady and they could just do whatever they wanted behind closed doors, and you know, that was changed so that people could have, you know, the communities could have transparency and see like what is the evidence that you were presented with that caused you guys to lock this person up, to, you know, put them in jail and define them as guilty. So I can understand that piece of it, and that like the bigger picture, it makes sense. But maybe, I mean, that also, that kind of ruling was pre-technology, and so I think that there is room for everything to be reassessed in the world where, you know, this isn't just an account of evidence or a couple grainy photographs, right? It's like full video footage. Anyway, so I think that that's one of the reasons too it's easy to kind of get sucked into these cases, because there's just so much information to consume. And one of the things I compare it to, and one of the cases that I find most fascinating, is the case of Chris Watts. I feel like I probably did a video about this, but he was the guy that, he was a dad, he was cheating on his wife and having an affair with this woman. He murdered his wife and his 2 young daughters, and his daughters were like, oh my god, like 2 or 3, I want to say like 3 and like 5, like they were little girls. the just most fascinating thing about it, other than like the fact that this idiot thought that he was really going to get away with killing his wife and two little girls, and just like living his life with his mistress unbothered, was just the fact that he acted so innocent in the beginning and acted like he was alarmed and did not know where his wife and kids were, where they went, what was going on. He like spoke out on the news and acted as though they were missing when he knew exactly where they were. And so just being able to see that unfold in real time was just extremely interesting from like a psychological standpoint. So my thoughts on the new, pieces of evidence that were released. The first thing being the 911 call. I think a lot of people felt as though the 911 operator was very frank, she lacked empathy, and two things can be true, right? This is what I always say. So if you listen to the 911 call, you'll hear, the dispatcher answer. She's very monotone. She's very like, what's the address of your emergency? She's like kind of slow, doesn't seem, really like into it. And of course, the surviving roommate that's first on the phone, I believe, is Dylan. There was Dylan and Bethany were the surviving roommates. And she, Dylan is on the phone and she is hysterical, rightfully so. Essentially, she had been drunk. They had all been drunk. They were wasted. They went to a football game the night, or that day, and then were drinking into the night. Like, we've all been there. She was speaking to the dispatcher and saying something happened. We don't know what's going on. And they kept passing the phone to other people to tell the story because they were just kids, terrified and didn't know what was going on. And the dispatcher was just kind of like, stop passing the phone, keep the phone with one person. But like, she was being rude and having a very obvious attitude to them. Obviously, from the dispatcher standpoint, she probably assumed that, this is a small town, this is a college town, these kids are drunk, someone's drunk, being stupid, they're irresponsible, blah blah blah, they're just fucking around. I mean, mind you, it was very clear they were like very upset regardless, and even if it was a drunk, passed out thing, like, kids can die that way and people can die that way. So it is unfortunate that she had that tone, although, right, again, she probably had the intention, she probably did not realize what was going on, and hopefully learned her lesson to be a little more empathetic going forward with her, position as a 911 dispatcher. So essentially, the murders happened. The house was 3 floors. Dylan's room was on the middle floor with like the living room and the kitchen and stuff, as was Xana's. They all went to sleep. Dylan kind of heard some noises and some screams, but again, it's 4 in the morning. She's waking up out of her sleep. She's wasted and she's like 19 years old. She didn't know what she heard. She's confused. She's texting her roommate Bethany. Bethany's like, come down here and be with me. At one point, Dylan even opens her door and sees the guy. But again, wasted. There has been so many times where I have been drunk and you get up and you don't know what you're seeing. You don't know what you're looking at. You can confuse dream with reality. They were probably a little blacked out. This was a party house. People were constantly in and out. Your immediate thought doesn't go to, my roommates are being murdered. She eventually goes downstairs into Bethany's room, and the two of them like fall asleep there together. They're scared, they're confused, but they think they're probably just imagining things, and they just pass out. They go to bed, wake up the next morning, nobody's responding to them. They're too scared to go upstairs. platform these days with the internet. But I think that people just also, when people are getting mad about the 911 call and why didn't they why didn't they go up and check, or why didn't they, call sooner or whatever. Again, you have to remember these are underage kids and they're wasted and they're drinking. And I don't know about you guys, but I remember being underage like it was yesterday. I got arrested when I was a teenager. I got an underage. I've ran from cops many times. It was the most sobering, scary feeling. If the cops were coming to a party, you were so scared. They didn't want to get kicked out of school. They didn't want to get arrested, get in trouble. So they were just all definitely bombed and just didn't want to admit that to the cops or make that the main focus. I'm sure eventually they spoke to that, right? Because they probably were starting to understand this is not an underage situation. Nobody cares if I was wasted or not. Like, my friends have been murdered. But as far as why they waited so long to call 911, and people are acting as though they were perfectly sober. They had the forethought to think there might be an emergency crime going on, and it's just not the case. And again, these are teenagers, 19, 20, like, you're 5. So seeing the way that the 911 call was really sad and scary, and then the police cam footage, the main thing of note is, well, there's 2 things. The first being the officer that first comes on the scene going in and discovering the bodies, and at first they first see Xana and Ethan because they're on that second main floor of the house, and you can hear the cop just be like, oh my god, he's just obviously flustered. He's a young guy himself. He's not expecting to see what he just saw. And he actually, for someone that's probably never dealt with a situation like that, he handled it very well. The first officer, the main officer from the police cam footage, he tries to keep the students calm. He gives them blankets because it's November, it's cold out. They're in their jammies still. They're just discombobulated. They're upset. He does remain professional and a little that could be perceived as cold, but he's just trying to get the job done, do what he needs to do. And if he was to be too emotional with them, he might not have gotten the information he needed, or it might cause them to become more emotional. So he was doing the best that he could do. Dylan or Bethany, I forget which, tells the story about what happened, that they were scared, so they, called their friends to come over. Hunter, I believe, was the guy that came over, which was one of Ethan's best friends, saw what was going on, just with Xana in Ethan's room, and then immediately was like, guys, get the fuck out, we gotta call 911. Didn't go upstairs to see Kelly and Maddie. So, the girls, again, they're still very confused. They don't even know that Kelly and Maddie are in there. Unfortunately, I think they knew in their hearts what had happened to Xana and Ethan, and that they weren't alive, but they were still in shock and denial, and again, maybe thought they were just passed out drunk, they could be revived. They just weren't fully clocking it. But then the other officer that's there, they don't tell the kids what's going on, which I think that's a whole large discussion. There's so many subtopics that we could get into with this, that you could just go on for hours and hours down a rabbit hole. And there are videos that do, but they weren't telling the kids exactly what happened. Dylan or Bethany at one point asks, what's going on? Are Kelly and Maddie in there? I forget. I don't think she says, are they alive? She probably didn't even want to say that out loud, and the cop is like, we're processing everything right now. I'm not sure what we're gonna process this, and then we'll let you know as soon as we can what's going on. Was careful with his wording, which which again, these are kids. They're in shock. They're drunk still. And like when you're drinking from like noon to like 2 a.m., like you wake up wasted, let me tell ya. So the other cop at one point, so the kids don't know what's going on, they're giving their statements, and the other cop at one point this was fucking ignorant. I think everyone can agree across the board. You hear him get on the phone and say, "You gotta get your ass down here, we've got a quadruple homicide." And he says this like right in front of them, and you can hear their screams like audibly get louder, and their despair, and it's just very it's just, yeah, it was poorly handled. But again, they probably hadn't dealt with situations like this in that area, and this was new. I'm sure their adrenaline was running, and they were just trying to like figure out what to do, and just, I don't know. So I don't like blame him for that. To a point, it depends what he would have to say afterwards, but that was wrong. And yeah, so I really just kind of to wrap it up, it's just such a crazy story because of the kind of randomness of it, because of the number of people, there being a man involved. To me, it seemed as though, Bryan Kohberger had gone in for Maddie, and he basically, I think, was going into a house of what he thought was drunk, not alert, young women. He had some questionable pornography history when it comes to phrasing, like passed out and rape and things like that. And I think that he had gone in with the intention, sexually or not. I feel like that had to be a part of it, or at least thought he was gonna find these unsuspecting girls kind of passed out or drunk or not really had their wits about them, and be able to like do whatever he wanted when it comes from like a sexual standpoint or killing, whatever. He obviously brought his knife for a reason. I think that he did not expect Ethan to be there. He didn't expect a male to be there, and it seemed that he did, kill Ethan basically while he lay in bed. I don't think he expected a fight or screams and running around and stuff, and all three of those girls fought him back. I know Kaylee had wounds consistent with her fighting back. I believe it was Kaylee and Maddie, but again, don't quote me. So I love that for them. I hope they really fucking pissed him off in the moment, and that he did not exactly get to do the crime that he intended to carry out. It is absolutely tragic and unfortunate is not the word, that he took the lives of these kids that had their whole lives ahead of them, and it's awful. And I do hope that one day, we hear his story. I think that would offer the families some closure, or at least just help quiet the noise of the because I'm sure they're constantly playing on repeat, like what happened, or why did he do it, or what was he thinking, or what made it, just to have that. He's a coward, obviously, so he, did not explain anything about it. And I just, it's just awful. And so I think that all we can do is, these children are laid to rest. I hope that their families just get everything and more in life from here on out that they deserve, and that they can find strength through this absolute absolute nightmare and circus. I think that, oh gosh, was it Sana's sister or Maddie's or Kaylee's sister? One of their sisters, I apologize, I forget who it was, but she made an absolute amazing statement in the courtroom to Bryan Kohberger, stared him down in the face, told him basically he was a pussy and a bitch and a loser. And it was fabulous. Oh my god, I want to speak to that woman, because I would have done the exact same thing. And the restraint that they all had to sit there and look at that guy in the courtroom makes my heart even race, just thinking about even 1% of being in their shoes and being near this guy. I don't know if I could not lunge at him and, whatever. So hopefully he rots in prison and, gets gets what's coming to him. I know he's already requested to change units because he's getting harassed and things by the other inmates, and his request was denied. So great. Hope you enjoy a long miserable life. And yeah, it's the absolute worst case scenario for toxic masculinity. It's disgusting. He's a loser. And again, wishing all the love for the families and friends of Maddie Mogan, Kaylee Gonzalez, Ethan Chapin, and Zana Carnoto. So we'll end on their names. Before I end this video, I just wanted to just have you kind of stop for a second and take 30 seconds to 90 seconds to shake this off. It's a tragic, horrible thing, but it is not common. It is not something that's going to happen to you. Be smart. Lock your doors at night. Use alarms. If you want to have, whatever to protect yourself in your home, that's your business, your prerogative. And, be safe, but try not to be paranoid. I know for me as a young woman, this really scared me, as it did a lot of other young women, but we can learn from it. And, bad things happen in the world, but a lot of good happens in the world too, so don't forget that, okay? Go look up good news or something like that, and just try to shake off the feeling. It's going to be okay, and, so I just wanted to say that. So I love you guys. Thank you for being here. Okay, I hope you have a great Labor